Welcome, everyone, to session 3 of the Balanced Gymnast program. This marks halfway through, which is absolutely crazy, which for you guys, I know our 6th session actually extends into the new year. So you guys actually get a little bit of extra time, but I can't believe it. I know that October and so far most of November have just completely flown by, and we are very quickly inching up onto comp season, mock meets, in-house meets, all the things. So today is all about performance nutrition, which honestly, it's everyone's probably favorite session. It is very different than just talking about like normal nutrition. And then what we're going to talk about is very specific to gymnast. So we'll talk about fueling for performance and how that is different than just like healthy eating, fueling versus snacking. We'll talk about pre-workout nutrition, intra-workout nutrition, hydration, electrolytes, and then I actually like to save recovery nutrition for session 5 when we talk about injuries and inflammation, just because we have a lot to talk about tonight. So, how do you know if your gymnast is underfueled at practice? Some of the telltale signs that we hear about as sports dietitians would be things like poor endurance, feeling of heavy legs, poor focus, headaches, nausea, tummy aches, shakiness, dizziness, brain fog, or my favorite called increased perceived exertion, which is just a fancy way of saying that all of a sudden everything feels harder than normal. And so when we're talking with gymnasts, if someone's like, yeah, I can get through a floor routine if it's the first or second event, but if I have to do floor and it's the last event, like good luck, right? These signs can be from going into the workout underfueled, so not having eaten enough to begin with. These can happen when a workout is so long and we run out of fuel and we only drink water and we actually do need additional fuel. And then these signs can actually also happen with underhydration, which could be just like a fluid intake thing and or electrolytes. So lots of stuff that we try to tease out. You guys might have seen this from me, but there's a really cool research study done a couple years ago in gymnasts similar to yours, so age 12 to 14, training 20 hours a week. And they did an experiment where on 2 different practices, they made them do a really hard beam workout. And one of the days they gave them just water, and one of the days they gave them a carbohydrate drink, kind of like Gatorade, Powerade. What they found was on the day that they did the really hard workout with additional carbohydrates, they had less falls, they had less mental and physical fatigue. And as your resident national and collegiate judge, that all translates to better performance and less deduction. And so, even though balance beam is not this super crazy intense event where we might think like, oh, well, you could get tired, you might need more fuel. Um, Cognitively and even performance wise, we can still benefit depending on how long the workout is, like what's happening. I like to talk about snacking versus fueling because anytime I ask gymnasts, what do you take to gym? I get a variety of answers, and they'll tell me stuff like, oh, I take a snack or I don't take a snack, or I take a snack, but I'll eat it if I'm hungry, but I might not eat it. Or the coaches have had a parent meeting and told parents that gymnasts are only supposed to bring healthy snacks like carrots and hummus and celery and protein bars. And so I like to explain there's a difference between fueling and snacking. Snacking is what we do because we get hungry, right? You might need a mid-morning snack at school to get you from breakfast to lunch. Or if we're struggling on growth, we might need additional snacks to help close that recovery gap. Or obviously, if it's a long time between meals or something, you might need an additional snack. And that's fine. Love snacks, those are great. I taught you guys in session 1 how to build what I call a balanced snack. So we pair grains or fruits with fat or protein to stabilize blood sugar, to give us steady energy. And like that's the kind of snack we want if we're not doing gymnastics. If we are exercising for probably 4+ hours at a time, we might need some intra workout, some during the workout fuel. And I like to use the word fuel because there are very specific things we want to eat at practice that some people might say are not healthy snacks. And that's fine, right? Like there's a difference between healthy versus intentional. And so fueling performance nutrition, it's strategic, it's about nutrient timing, and it really has nothing to do with hunger versus no hunger. So, before we dive into that, we got to talk about pre workout. What are you supposed to eat before practice? So, we've been working really hard on the performance plates. Most of you guys are doing either a moderate or a high intensity plate. Moderate intensity plate can be appropriate if the workouts aren't that intense, if we're lower level, if growth and everything is on track. If it's not, then we probably need a high intensity plate. If we are training a ton and it's super intense, we might need a high intensity. But again, it kind of just depends on your gymnast. And this is something that we really like to specify in one-on-one coaching. A meal is typically 3 to 4 hours before practice, but that's not always possible, right? If your kid has a morning workout at 8 a.m., they're probably not going to wake up at 4 a.m. to have breakfast, and that's fine. I'm not going to ask you to do that. But if your gymnast has practice at 3 or 4 in the afternoon, then obviously lunch would have been their pre-workout meal a couple hours before. In some situations, we will also need a pre-workout snack. So a pre-workout snack is what I call an unbalanced snack. So it's carbohydrate heavy with a little bit of protein or maybe a little bit of fat, really just more for staying power. So if your gymnast has an afternoon workout, she has lunch at maybe 11 to noon, and then if the workout's at 3 to 4, obviously it's not time for another meal necessarily, but definitely time for a snack. So we want to eat this snack 30 to 60 minutes before practice. And there's a really nice cheat sheet for you inside the performance nutrition tool handout that literally spells out for you and your gymnast what are carb examples, what are fat or protein examples. We want to combine probably 2 to 3 servings of carbs, which is about 30 to 45 grams, with 1 or 2 different protein fat items. So we have some visual examples in that guide for you. It could be something as simple as a half a peanut butter sandwich with banana. It could be pita chips and hummus and fruit. It could be a Greek yogurt and a granola bar. It could be cheese, crackers, and fruit. I mean, there's really endless combinations. And it doesn't have to be snack foods. It also could just be like a smaller portion of a meal food, right? Like maybe you get a kid size Chipotle quesadilla and that's what you want for pre-workout. Like, cool. We've got carbs in the tortilla. We've got some protein in the cheese and the fat. Like that could work. So these are the kind of snacks that you're going to do when it's not time for another meal before practice, but we definitely need some fuel to get us through that next, 3.5, 4, 5+ hours. We want pre-workout to be probably 30 to 60 minutes before. And the bigger the meal is, the more fat, fiber, or protein, the more time we want between eating and practicing, just to make sure that food can digest and settle and you feel good. So let's say that practice is from 4 to 8 p.m. I would expect a pre-workout snack at probably 3 to 3:30. I know some gymnasts, like let's say school doesn't get out till 3:30, and so you're literally eating a snack at 3:45 and walking in the gym at 4. We want to keep it more carb based. Like we want to make sure that what you eat is able to digest and settle. But sometimes push comes to shove, and it's more important just to get enough food in your kid. So it just kind of depends on your situation. Sometimes gymnasts have double workout days, right? So maybe there's like a morning workout from 7 to 10, and then an evening workout from 3:30 to 6. Even though it's an early workout, I would expect a breakfast because when you have morning workouts or morning competitions, you've been fasting all night. So the body doesn't have the same amount of fuel as compared to if you were training later in the day where you have had several meals and snacks. So I would expect you to get up early enough to have a real breakfast, especially if we're working out 6+ hours a day. And then for that second workout, lunch is at noon, second workout's at 3:30. So we definitely could have a little pre-workout snack at about 3. Some more examples, let's say the workout's from 2:30 to 6:30. So lunch might be 11, might only be able to fit in just a little bit of a carb snack at 1:30. So not a full like carbs and fat or protein, but maybe right at 1:30 we have just like an extra granola bar or something like that because lunch is close enough to the workout that there's not time for a full snack. But you also have to think about how long is that workout. And so if you eat lunch at 11, you don't have anything else and you work out from 2:30 to 6:30, 11 to 6:30, that's a long time. Like your kid's going to run out of fuel. Let's say it's a morning workout, 8:30 to 1:30, which I know is super common in the summer. Same thing. It's a 5-hour workout, so I definitely would expect a really solid, probably high intensity pre-workout breakfast. And then like a 1 to 5:30, so 4.5 hours. Probably just a pre-workout lunch, right? If breakfast is at 7, mid-morning snack, the workout starts at 1, You really just have time for a good lunch, probably an hour, hour and a half before the workout starts. And all of this applies to like competition times as well. As a reminder, carbohydrates fuel the gymnast. And so that's why that pre-workout snack is what I call unbalanced. It's got more carbs, a little bit less fat or protein, because we want to make sure that your gymnast's brain and body have enough carbs to fuel their muscles and to fuel their brain. So as a general rule, pre-workout snack, we want about 30 to 45 grams or 1 gram per kilo body weight carbohydrate. And then intra-workout, it is a big range, right? Because there's a big difference between a level 4 training 4 hours a day versus a level 10 training 5.5 hours a day, right? Like there's just a big difference. But typically for gymnastics, we're going to need some intra-workout carbs after the first 2 hours, and then kind of munching on those carbs between the rest of the events. Before we talk about what kinds of foods we use intra-workout, I like to explain how your body deals with sugar, because I think a lot of people freak out about fruit snacks and gummies and sports drinks and a lot of the stuff that we recommend for athletes intra-workout. People are worried that they're too sugary or they're not healthy. But here's the deal. When you eat carbohydrates, any type of carbs, so pasta, bread, rice, potatoes, sugar, it doesn't matter. All of it breaks down into glucose or sugar in your body. And when the body senses this increase in glucose from what you ate, it tells the pancreas, which is an organ, to make something called insulin. And insulin is a key that opens the door to every cell in your body and allows that sugar to get into the cell to be used as fuel. So just as your blood sugar increases or blood glucose increases as we eat food, our body then makes insulin to bring it right back down to where it needs to be. And so unless you're someone that has type 1 diabetes, your body knows how to do this. And so it's not something we need to stress about. Additionally, for athletes, when the muscles are contracting, they can actually soak up that carbohydrate without even needing insulin. So if you think about really metabolically active muscle groups, so the hamstrings, the quads, the glutes, one of the reasons that people can feel like their legs are heavy, like they're running through quicksand when they are not getting enough fuel, is because those big muscle groups like actually aren't getting enough of the right fuel. So people sometimes worry, well, but if I give my gymnast a sports drink, isn't her blood sugar going to spike and then it's going to crash? No, because during exercise, the body actually does some special stuff to prevent your blood sugar from dropping too much. So it's not something we stress about to give quick carbs during exercise. When it comes to pre-workout fueling, like I said, 30 to 60 minutes before, high intensity plate for most people, and you need to do your best, right? I get that some gymnasts have a hard time eating before morning workouts. I would say prioritize the carbs, get a little bit of protein in for some staying power, add liquid nutrition if you need to make up the carbs, juice, chocolate milk. If worse comes to worse, let's say it's a morning competition and your kid's just not having it, I'd rather them sip on some sports drink than do nothing. If it's a 12 p.m. workout, again, I want lunch probably an hour before, which means you have to get up early enough to have breakfast. I think most people make a mistake with this where if they're training or competing at like noon, we sleep in, we have breakfast at 9, we only have time for a little snack. We compete or practice at noon, but if that practice goes from noon to 5, by 4 or 5 o'clock, their gas tank is empty. Like it has been way too many hours with only one meal, and that's just not going to cut it. 4 p.m. workouts, we've talked about that. Pretty much a breakfast, maybe a snack, lunch, and probably a pre-workout snack 30 to 60 minutes before. 5 p.m. workouts. Tell me in the chat, who works out at 5? I know one person I can think of that has late evening workouts. A couple gyms we work with, they do 5 to 9. And I think parents are always like, okay, well, what time do I feed her dinner? And there's a lot of kind of myths about eating late at night. So then parents get really nervous about giving their gymnasts a full dinner at 9 o'clock at night. And so sometimes they pull back and they just like give them a snack. And I'm like, oh no, if they haven't had dinner yet and they just worked out for 4 hours, I don't care if it's 10 o'clock at night. Like they still need to refuel their bodies. You do not have to do dinner before unless you want to, but there's nothing wrong with eating at 9 o'clock at night, I would probably do dinner on the way home, like at 8:30 or 9, just knowing that they got to come home and shower and do homework and go to bed. So I'd probably just try to get the meal, out of the way if they're captive in the car. But if you don't have dinner ready at 4 o'clock, it's totally fine. So I would just do whatever, do dinner before and a big post workout recovery snack after, or do a good pre workout snack and then just do a normal dinner afterwards. Sometimes people worry that eating late at night will like bother the gymnast or bother their stomach or cause them to not sleep. And I'm like, no, I actually think we'll have more of a problem with not sleeping if we don't eat enough, just because we know that the brain is like, ooh, we haven't had enough nutrition. We need to like stay awake and, make sure that we can get enough food. Yeah, so we do. We have a lot of like 8, 8, 9s, 8:30s. So yeah, nothing wrong with eating late at night, especially when your kid just worked out for like 4+ hours. All right. So before we talk about what your kid should eat at practice, I have to remind you that adequate overall nutrition is the most important. And I have a good story. So one of my senior elite male gymnasts, he was competing at Pan Americans last year, and they had like a 1 to 5 p.m. podium training. And so we had planned all his nutrition out for the whole week. And so the plan was a really good breakfast at like 8:30, and then like a little bit of a mid-morning snack just to get enough carbs, and then a good lunch at like 12. And I remember when we were texting about it, he was like, "Oh yeah, they're bringing sandwiches, like they're catering sandwiches in for lunch, and we'll eat it on the way to the venue because like often the where they stay and where they practice is different than the actual competition venue." And I was like, "Okay, that sounds great." And so I check in him with him after podium training, which is like the dress rehearsal, and I was like, "How'd he go?" And he said it was horrible. He was like, "For some reason, we didn't have sandwiches, and so I didn't have lunch. So all this kid had was breakfast and like some trail mix. And then he went to go do this super intense workout with like 6 routines, which is more than women. And it was horrible. And we had been working together long enough that he tried to salvage it. So, he knew it was not going to go well, but all he had with him was like fruit snacks and honey stingers and like Cliff bars. And so he said he ate like 150 grams of carbs in the first 2 hours of podium training, just trying to feel better. And he kind of sort of felt better by the end, but it was a perfect lesson. And you can't chase under fueling. So you can't just not eat enough all day and then go to training or go to a competition and try to eat a bunch of carbs to feel better. You have to go into that workout with enough fuel in your gas tank. And so intra workout, it's really just to keep things consistent. It's just to top off the fuel tank to keep energy levels and performance consistent. It's not meant to replace, the breakfast that you skipped or the lunch that you didn't finish. So, who needs food during exercise, right? This is a hot topic in the gymnastics world. And I think a lot of gyms and coaches, they think of snacks as snacks. And so the irony is that often the little kids, like the lower level kids, will get a snack break because they think that they can't make it without a snack. But then the older girls don't get a snack break because they're like, they're old enough. They don't need food. And I'm like, it's actually the opposite, right? A level 4 should be able to make it 3 hours without a snack if they've eaten enough. A level 10 training super intensely for 3 hours might benefit performance wise from some carbs intro workout. Like it really just depends on who you are, what you're doing, how intense it is, so on and so forth. So, as a general rule, if we're working out for 45 minutes or less, you do not need anything but water. So, if you're going to a spin class, you don't need Gatorade during it. If you're working out for 45 to 75 minutes, like if you're running that whole time, once you hit that 75 to 90-minute mark, depending how fast you're running or cycling or whatever, your performance could potentially benefit from some intra workout carbs. If you're doing a private lesson for an hour, you don't need carbs. If it's exercise over a good hour and a half, 2 hours, it depends what kind of sport. So if you're running for 2 hours, you're absolutely going to need some intra workout carbs if you want to perform your best. If it's 2 hours of gymnastics, you're not working out the full 2 hours, right? Like if you watch a 4-hour gymnastics practice, how many of those hours are like actually spent working out on the equipment, right? I don't know, maybe half, probably depends on your gym. So it's a big range of how much carbs gymnasts need. Endurance athletes, so running, cycling, stuff like that, they typically need 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrate per hour after the first 2 hours. And that's like 20 ounces of Gatorade every hour after the first 2 hours or whatever snack you want to do. For gymnasts, we don't need that much. I would say gymnasts typically need maybe 15 to 20 grams an hour after the first 2 hours if it's a 4+ hour workout. So when it comes to our fuel source, we want carbohydrates. These carbs need to be either simple carbs, aka sugars, or they need to be fruits or grains, so what we call complex carbs that don't have a lot of fiber. Intra-workout is not the time for fat, fiber, or protein because all of that's going to slow down digestion. And when you're exercising, your body's already not super focused on digesting your food. And so if you eat a protein bar or carrots and hummus or, something super high fat in the middle of a workout, even if it has some carbs, those carbs are probably not going to be able to digest and get where it needs to go in the body when you want that fuel. So there are several different categories, and we have this diagram in our performance nutrition tool. Fruit is always fair game. Fresh fruit, dried fruit, that's always an option for a carb snack during practice. Starchy carbs, so things like little chewy bars, little cereal bars, little made good granola bites, pretzels, animal crackers, graham crackers, like all of those are fair game. Goldfish, we just want them to be like low fat, low fiber. Simple sugars like fruit snacks or technically sugar-based gummy candy can work, like nerd clusters. And then we also have liquid carbs. So this is Scratch. It's kind of like a boutique powder sports drink. That is a 6 to 8% carb solution. So that means if you mix it up or if you look at a bottle of Gatorade, 12 ounces is 20 grams of carb, 20 ounces is 30 grams of carb. Like it's a very standard recipe for a sports drink in terms of how much sugar, how much electrolytes, so on and so forth. I don't like to talk label reading and calorie counting or any of that, but I will teach you how to look for carbs just to make sure your gymnast is getting enough. So if you're trying to get 15 to 20 grams of carb, 2 times during a workout, how much is that? So if you look at this nutrition label, this is for a serving of pretzels, just normal pretzels from a bag. The first thing we look at is the serving size. So 17 pretzels, then we come down to total carbohydrate, 23 carbs. I do not need you to count it, but like a big, nice handful of pretzels is probably going to get you to that 20 grams of carb. One of these cereal bars is 28 grams of carb. This little chewy granola bar is 18 grams of carb. One scoop of this sports drink is 20 grams of carb. So most normal servings of these items are already like 15, 20, maybe 30 grams of carb. And from there, you can kind of figure out what your gymnast needs. If it's a 3-hour workout, your gymnast might need one carb snack or they might not. It really just depends. 3 hours at level 5 is different than 3 hours at level 9 or 10. So I think it's really based on what the gym allows, how their performance is, how their mood is. They need to eat really well before it. Like, I don't think they probably need a lot at that stage. 3.5 to 4 hours, yes, I think 1 to probably 2 carb snacks, again, depending on the level, the intensity, so on and so forth. So, 1 carb snack might be this little like fruit leather buttons, which is like 11 carbs. So it's kind of on the low end, but maybe you pair this with a little chewy granola bar, and that's your 2 carb snacks. If it's a 4.5 or 5-hour workout, I will allow a little bit of fat or protein, but definitely like 2 to 3 carb snacks to begin with. So 5-hour workouts, I break my own rule. Normally I say only carbs. If we're working out for 5 or 6 hours, your gymnast is probably starting to get hungry. So yes, we want 2 to 3 carb snacks, but I also will allow a little bit of fat or protein. So like peanut butter pretzels versus normal pretzels, or adding a cheese stick plus their granola bar and their fruit and their whatever, or a few pieces of beef jerky plus the goldfish and the fruit squeeze and the little baby Gatorade or whatever, right? Like a little bit of something just to make sure that they can make it. I know some gyms, especially in the summer, if it's like a 6-hour workout, they will have a 30-minute lunch break in the middle of it. And I usually tell families, like, that is not lunch. Do not try to get your kid to eat a full lunch because they're probably going to have a hard time, especially in the middle of practice. Just make it a really big glorified inter-workout snack with a couple carbs and a little bit of fat or protein. And then regardless of what time that workout is over, they need a meal. Um, Eating a huge lunch, especially if there's a lot of veggies and fruits and fat and protein, that food is just not even going to digest very well. So then if you have to go do another couple hours of gymnastics, like it's just not going to feel great. So here's what this can look like. Let's say your gymnast is training from 8 to 1. Pre-workout breakfast is at 7 in the morning, high intensity plate. Practice starts at 8. And then starting about 2 hours in, about 10 o'clock, we start to take a few sips of a sports drink or a few bites of our granola bar between events. And then about an hour later, maybe the gym gives a lunch break. You give them 1 or 2 carb items with a little bit of fat or protein. So they take dried mangoes, some pretzels, and a few pieces of beef jerky. Then an hour later, before that last hour of practice, they finish up the rest of their sports drink or they finish the rest of their granola bar, and then lunch is right at 1 or 1:30 after practice. Let's say it's 4 to 8 p.m. So breakfast in the morning, probably mid-morning snack at school. Then we've got lunch at school, and then we've got a pre-workout snack at 3 or 3:30. This is Greek yogurt fruit granola. So 2 carbs, fruit and granola, paired with a protein slash fat slash a little bit of carbs, so the yogurt. Then the workout starts at 4 p.m. We're good with just water for the first 2 hours. Starting at 6 o'clock, we give a little bit of carbs. So a little packet of fruit snacks, this little gummy fruit leather button packet, a couple sips of a little bit of a sports drink, and then repeat that an hour later, just between events. Your gym does not need to give a snack break. I think that you can take little easy snacks that they can, take a couple bites between events or take a couple sips between events. It does not need to be a whole production. Does anyone have 2-a-days? Anyone have 2-a-days? If you do, it depends how long each workout is. So this example is 7 to 10 in the morning, so 3 hours, and then 3:30 to 6 p.m. If it's a level 9 or 10, training 3 hours in the morning, I'm probably going to want them to do a little bit of carbs halfway through, especially if breakfast is a struggle, or just knowing that, you've been sleeping and fasting all night, so you just don't have as much fuel in your body going into that workout. Okay, yes, we have a couple 2-a-days. I like it. So then we have a post-workout snack. Then we have lunch. And that second workout is 3:30 to 6. So we do a pre-workout snack, a little bit of carbs, maybe at gym, post-workout, and then dinner. And the reason I definitely would do post-workout is because, this is what, 5.5 plus hours of working out. Like this is just a lot of expenditure. So I definitely would be fitting snacks in after both workouts and meals just to keep up with fueling. All right. If we have time at the end, I'll have you drop your, what am I on? I guess I'm going to have you drop your schedules in the Facebook group. And that was the post this week. Well, you tell me what you want. I can either tell you what I would recommend in the Facebook group, or I can tell you here live on the call. So you tell me, would you rather hear what your kid needs based on their training schedule right now? Or would you rather me type it into the Facebook group? That way, like, you can probably look back at it better. So while you guys are answering that, let's talk about hydration. Getting gymnasts to drink enough is sometimes a struggle. And usually it's one of parents' like initial concerns of like, she doesn't drink enough water and they're super frustrated about it. And I'm like, look, if we're also underfueled, I just got to get this kid to eat more first. I do care about her hydration, especially if we're having like dizziness and headaches and stuff like that. But also just eating enough. Like food has water in it, especially fruits and veggies. Not that we're necessarily putting an emphasis on that, depending on the situation. It is important, but it's definitely secondary to just eating enough. All fluids count and your kid needs to drink enough. And so if they are not taking some sort of bottle with them to school and drinking enough, like that's going to be a problem. You can't just chug a bunch of water before practice, but not have had anything to drink all day because you didn't want to drink or you didn't feel like it or you didn't want to go to the bathroom. Your gymnasts are athletes, and this really hit home for me when I was in probably middle school or high school. And I remember watching all the cross country runners. They all carried a big old Nalgene bottle with them, or sometimes even a gallon jug, because they knew that if they didn't drink enough, their muscles were going to cramp up, they were going to feel awful, they weren't going to run well. And that was a real mindset shift for me of like, oh, whoa, like that's what athletes do, right? Like athletes have to fuel their body and they have to pay attention to this stuff before the workout even starts in preparation so that they can feel and perform their best. How much does your gymnast need to drink every day? So there's two different ways to calculate it. There's a complicated metric equation called the Holiday-Seeger equation that we like to use with little small pre-puberty gymnasts just because it's a lot more accurate for them. I'll put a link to this in the Facebook group. That way you can plug their weight in and you can calculate it. It will tell you how much they need in a 24-hour period. And then they often put it in milliliters. So you'll just need to divide that, but I'll put instructions in the group. What we can all do right now, probably in our heads, is what's called the sports nutrition quick method. And this is definitely accurate for adults and like post-puberty gymnasts. It's just going to underestimate for little tiny children. The sports nutrition quick method of how much you should be drinking a day, and this doesn't include exercise, this is just like normal people hydration. You're going to take your body weight and you're going to turn it to ounces. So just call it ounces and then cut it in half. So if you weigh 120 pounds, half of that is 60. So you need 60 ounces a day. So let's play a game in the chat. If your gymnast is 100 pounds, how many ounces a day do they need just as like a normal human? See, there you go. Easy math, 50 ounces. I don't think we need to do any more examples. It's very easy. All fluid counts. So milk, juice, water, tea, coffee, like those are all fluid. So those all technically count. What should your gymnast drink? A lot of water. So mostly water. I like to see 2 to 3 cups of milk or plant milk a day to get calcium, to get protein, to just get enough overall nutrition, phosphorus, all sorts of important vitamins and minerals. Sports drinks are not meant to be consumed unless we're working out long enough and intense enough. So if your kid's playing soccer for an hour, they don't need a sports drink. If they're going to gymnastics for 3 hours, they probably don't need a sports drink. And if we're just, packing something yummy to drink in our lunch, sports drinks not it. Sports drinks are very specifically designed for long, intense workouts. If you need something fun to drink, you could have a milk, chocolate milk, even like a real fruit juice or something. But yeah, sports drinks really are not for outside of that, despite what you see in the commercials. I typically tell gymnasts I want them to drink or to eat the whole fruit instead of just drinking a bunch of juice. But there definitely are situations where we need juice, especially if we're like under fueling or they really have a hard time eating before a competition or before a practice. Then some liquid carbs like a juice could actually be really strategic to help get enough carbs in them. When it comes to coffee and energy drinks, which I don't know if this is a problem for some of your gymnasts or not, but the American Academy of Pediatrics does not recommend them under the age of 17. From my perspective, when I have older gymnasts who want to drink Celsius or they want lattes or whatever from Starbucks, I'm like, why do you want the caffeine? Do you want the caffeine because you're tired because you actually didn't sleep? Or do you want the caffeine because you're actually not eating enough of your meals and snacks before practice and that's why you're tired at gym? Like, let's actually figure out why you want it. And then let's also talk about how caffeine is short-lived energy. It's not real energy. And so it's not going to actually last you through practice. It just kind of gives you a nice little boost, but it's certainly not going to like fuel your muscles and your body. When it comes to hydration, most gymnasts don't drink enough. Why do they not drink enough? Here's all the reasons, right? They don't want to be sloshy. They don't want to look bloated. They don't want to be heavy. They don't want a stomach cramp. They don't want to have to go pee at school. They're not allowed to go to the bathroom at the gym, right? So many reasons. And we know that 75% of young athletes show up to practice already having not had enough to drink. This is a hard one. There comes a point where it's like, okay, if you need 60 ounces of fluid a day and gym starts at 3:00, we better have had at least 30 ounces by 3:00. And that means that you just can't go to school all day and not have something to drink. I had a kid the other day and I I've never heard of this before, but she said that drinking water made her nauseous. We actually figured out she had some gut stuff going on, so we fixed it. Now water doesn't make her nauseous anymore, but she just doesn't like it. So she is only drinking a juice and a chocolate milk the entire day before practice starts at like 2 o'clock or something. And then her gym does this like really difficult physical abilities testing every week. And like sometimes kids puke during it, which I'm like, good Lord, okay, that sounds a little excessive. A couple weeks ago, this kid like literally couldn't recover from it. Like she was dizzy, she like couldn't really walk. Like mom had to come and get her. And I was like, mom was trying to blame it on how difficult the conditioning was. And I'm like, yes, it sounds really hard, but we don't know if that's why she couldn't recover or just the fact that like she literally is dehydrated all the time. And I think that's just where safety comes in, right? And if your kid doesn't, fuel, then they don't get to go to gym. If they choose not to drink enough, then like we're literally not like it's not good for your kidneys. Like we're not safe, to be at gym. And I don't know any other way. We've come up with a million ideas of like different bottles, different flavors, setting goals. And it's like at some point, like you just have to drink enough. And I do think it will become habit. I remember in high school, like when I started to carry a water and I started drinking, like then you get used to it. And then you're like, oh, I'm so thirsty. Like I need my water, right? So our gymnasts are very good about working through discomfort, building new habits. And so fueling is just part of that as well. Sometimes we have gymnasts with dehydration, just like I described to you. I'd say the biggest signs are headache and nausea. So anytime I have little gymnasts, especially that like regularly get headaches or they feel dizzy or they're nauseous, number one is checking whether or not they're getting enough fuel. But then number two is definitely like, are we hydrating? How do you know if you're hydrated? So I think the best way is to calculate hydration needs and kind of go from there. It's not perfect, but it's a good place to start. But then the next thing we can do is look at your urine. So it's a very crude method, but in general, the urine should be like lemonade color or lighter if you've had enough to drink. Obviously, the first time you go to the bathroom in the morning, it will be more yellow just because you've been sleeping all night and your urine is concentrated. But as you start drinking and eating, it should lighten up. So, just another kind of feedback tool for your gymnast. We actually paste pictures of this graphic like in the bathrooms at the Olympic Training Center and the bathrooms at like every university. Um, the staff puts the pictures there. That way an athlete can just real quick tell, like, oh boy, like my pee is really yellow. Oh, I haven't had anything to drink today. Like, okay, I better get on it. So we've talked about how to calculate what your kid needs during or just in a full 24-hour period. And then during exercise, it's based on blood volume. So if you come to this right-hand column, which this is in the performance nutrition tool, we basically need like 2 to 3 gulps of water every 20 minutes, right? So like, okay, each event is 45 to 60 minutes. We should be taking at least probably 2 to 3 quick drinks per hour. It's based on body weight because that relates to blood volume. So if your gymnast is 60 pounds, about 9 ounces per hour. If the workout is 4 hours, 36 ounces. There's an asterisk though. I would aim for maybe 70, 80% of this because again, 4 hours of gymnastics is not the same as 4 hours of running. And so if you were running for 4 hours, then I think this equation would be appropriate. But if it's gymnastics or dance or like whatever else, you might just cut it short a little bit. I would say figure out how much your gymnast is drinking and just try to get them to drink more, right? So if right now they're not even drinking, set a small goal. Can we finish a 12-ounce bottle? If they can do that, can we finish 2 of them, right? Like, don't try to do it all at once. It's just going to set them up for failure. Let's set some small incremental goals that they can get used to. How many of your gyms, I want to ask you a couple questions. So number one, how many of your gyms allow a water bottle on the floor that is easily accessible like during the rotation? So it's like close enough to bars that they could like take a drink, set it down, or they're allowed to take their bottle like to vault to floor to where like it's really easy there to get a drink. How many of your gyms? Okay, so a lot of you. How many of your gyms do not? So like waters have to be in the locker room or have to be at the cubbies, like have to be somewhere else, and in order for your gymnast to get a drink, they have to like go clear across the gym, and then they get mad at them for like leaving. Like, how many of you have that kind of situation? Yeah, have to walk to a different area, can't have it on the floor, have to go to their side. Yeah. So it's kind of all over the place. And it's really just based on the gym's policy. And they've probably had issues with spills. And, even if they say just water, people might still bring red Gatorade and they don't want it spilled on the carpet. Like, I can't blame them. But if you look at the math, it really is important that your gymnast can get like a couple drinks per hour, because let's say your gymnast is like 120 pounds. She needs 64 ounces during a 4-hour practice. That's a good amount to drink. If she only takes a couple sips between like warm up, event 1, event 2, event 3, event 4 conditioning, she'll be lucky to probably get 20 or 30 ounces. So, like, literally half of what she needs. Versus if she can have her bottle with her or like closer to where during a 45 to 60-minute event, she could get a drink or two and drink between events, we're going to get a lot closer. I think there's a lot of no spill bottles out there. This is not one of them. Like, if you turn it upside down, it would still spill unless it's closed. But they do make like a Camelback. Like, they do make bottles that, even if like the spout's up, like water still won't come out of it. So there's definitely options. Um, I know one really elite gym I worked with some kids from a couple years ago. They have like a table in the middle of the gym. Like, it used to be like no snacks, no hydration, but I think the coach actually like saw the kids performing better. So now there's a table, and that's where bottles and snacks go, and it's like pretty central to all the events. So it's easy to like get a drink, get a snack, not waste time. Um, some gyms may only allow water on the floor, and that's fine. Like, if you're going to bring a sports drink, that has to be in the locker room. Like, okay, that's also fine. Um, I think it just depends. When it comes to sports drinks, who needs them? So, sports drinks were designed by the Florida Gators for 4+ hour football practices in the heat of the summer, where when it is that hot and humid and you're working out that much, you are sweating so much that you are losing a lot of your electrolytes, your sodium, your potassium, your chloride, to the point that your body's out of balance. And if you just continue to drink plain water, the water can't get where it needs to go, because your body needs sugar and salt for water to get into the cells. And normally we have enough of that just from what we eat. But if you're sick or vomiting or have diarrhea or you're sweating a ton, like, your electrolytes can get off balance. Sports drinks have sugar in them because, again, it's not just the electrolytes, the sodium, potassium, but it's also the glucose that literally like opens the gates to allow water to get, from your intestines and into your bloodstream. So not only does the sugar facilitate hydration, but then it also contributes just to overall fueling. There are 18 million thousand different like electrolyte products versus oral rehydration solutions versus sports drinks. And people are confused about all of them. They think that all of these are equivalent, and they 100% are not. So, real quick, these are electrolyte only. They have varying amounts of sodium and potassium, usually some chloride, sometimes a little bit of magnesium and calcium. They do not have any carbs, any sugar. Who needs something like this? Probably only a gymnast who is struggling with dizziness or super high stress, like something that we've figured out in a one-on-one session kind of thing, or even like post-concussion syndrome issues. Um, Potentially pre-workout hydration, but again, really just depends on the gymnast. These products are halfway in between just electrolytes, so no sugar, but just electrolytes, versus a traditional sports drink. These are what people think are sports drinks, but these are actually technically oral rehydration solutions. So, who's heard of Pedialyte, right? We've all heard of Pedialyte. That's what you gave your kid when they were puking their brains out and couldn't keep any food down. The pediatrician told you to give them Pedialyte. Pedialyte is an oral rehydration solution. So it's a 3% carbohydrate solution. So per 12 ounces, it has like 10 grams of carbs or sugar. It's got maybe 400 to 500 milligrams of sodium, which is double what Gatorade has. And it has a bit of potassium and some chloride. Liquid IV is something that people are familiar with. So that's about 500 milligrams of sodium, 10 grams of sugar. It's half the sugar of a sports drink, but obviously more than the products I just showed you. All the rest of these pretty much have the same composition. So who needs something like this? Again, I think super heavy sweaters, pops like symptoms, dizziness, like those kinds of situations, not necessarily like the average gymnast. Sports drinks are probably more of what you guys might use. So these are 6 to 8% carb solutions. So in a 20-ounce bottle of a sports drink, there's 30 grams of sugar. There's also like almost 300 milligrams of sodium, so less than a liquid IV, varying amounts of potassium based on the product, and then sometimes a little bit of calcium or magnesium, which are helpful for muscle and nerve contraction and conduction. Gatorade is Old Faithful. That is like the OG sports drink. This is one of my favorites, Scratch. It's made in Boulder. It's 20 grams of carb per serving, 400 of sodium, so more than Gatorade, 50 of potassium, so a little bit less than Gatorade, and then 50 calcium and 50 magnesium, which Gatorade doesn't have. It's not better or worse, it's just different. It doesn't have food dyes, so sometimes parents prefer that, especially like if the gym doesn't allow sports drinks and you need to sneak one in, that might be a good option. Coconut water and Body Armor have a little asterisk down here because they are not technically a sports drink. Can anyone tell me in the chat why Body Armor or coconut water are not technically sports drinks? And then I have another one for you that I think I forgot to put a picture of. Does anyone know why coconut water or Body Armor are not a sports drink? Which the irony is people will say that coconut water is nature's Gatorade. And I'm like, oh no, it's not, for one very specific reason. Yes, Holly, ding, ding, ding. There's not enough sodium. Coconut water naturally has maybe 50 milligrams of sodium, but most sports drinks need probably 300 plus. Same thing with Body Armor. It's made of coconut water. They do not add additional sodium to it. So I think on its own, it maybe has 40 to 50 milligrams. If you truly needed that sodium to replace your electrolytes because you were sweating a ton, Body Armor or coconut water is not going to cut it. It's not going to rehydrate you. You could drink Body Armor at practice for the carbs and then just make sure you're getting some salt from like salty snacks, if your gymnast needs enough sodium. But I always like to clarify that. I don't have a picture of it because I forgot. But can anyone tell me what Prime is? The pink bottle, what is it, Logan Paul? I don't know. What's Prime? Is Prime a sports drink? Is it electrolytes only? Is it an oral rehydration solution? What do you think Prime is that all the kids want to drink? And it's like wicked strong. What would we consider Prime? This is a question I get from parents a lot. Someone said an energy drink. So there's two different types. There is the energy drink Prime that's in the can. And then there's the bottle that they just call it like Prime. Anyone else? Someone said electrolytes only, artificial sweetener. All right, I'll give you the answer. So Prime is basically Body Armor light. So it's Body Armor with artificial sweeteners. So there's no sugar. There's a lot of potassium, which I don't hate. Most of us actually don't get enough potassium, but there's no sodium. So it's not a sports drink. It's definitely not an oral rehydration solution because there's no sodium and there's no carbs. I guess you could call it electrolyte only, but again, like it doesn't have any sodium. And people think like, oh, well, I don't need extra sodium. Like I'm only working out for an hour. And that's true. Like you probably don't. But we actually run into issues with gymnasts not getting enough sodium and things not working right. I think because we all try to eat super healthy and all of the public health noise that we've heard about high blood pressure. But what people don't know is that only like 20% of people with high blood pressure are actually salt sensitive. And not getting enough salt and definitely not a potassium can actually drive up your blood pressure. When it comes to gymnasts, I am not worried about their blood pressure unless there is like a pre-existing condition. And we've had a lot of gymnasts that have like dizzy spells, dizziness, they feel like they're going to black out. and they're never getting enough like sodium and potassium. So I think the other thing, and we'll talk about this in session 4, when the body's under a lot of stress, it burns through your sodium, your magnesium, and your potassium. So there definitely are situations where we do need to majorly increase that, not necessarily from like an exercise perspective, but more just like a holistic health perspective. Should your gymnast do water or sports drink? It's up to you. It's up to them. It's what works with the gym. Sports drinks are not good to bathe your teeth in for hours and hours and hours. So if you're gonna do a sports drink, I would try to drink it within like a time constrained period versus like sipping on it for 4 hours. It's not the sugar that causes cavities, but it's actually the acidity of the sports drink. Obviously, if we do food, like a little fruit leather packet, we're going to get a little bit more vitamins, minerals, nutrients like that. So I think it really just depends on your situation and what your gymnast needs. So, in summary, every gymnast needs a performance nutrition strategy. Pre-workout, intra-workout, we'll cover post-workout soon. There are so many options, and it's really just about experimenting. We're not chasing, the fuel, but we are strategically topping off your gymnast gas tank to make sure that they can continue performing at the level they need to. And I'll tell you, we have gymnasts who 6 hours into the workout, they spin circles around their teammates because they fuel properly going into the workout. And then about 2 hours in, they have their 2, 3 little carb snacks and they munch on them between events. And one of my level 10s, sometimes her coach will get fussy, like he'll be like, hurry up, get to bars. And she'll look at him, and she's like the most polite, respectful kid I know. But she'll just look at him and be like, if you want me to make my Jaegers today, like if you want me to make my bar routine, give me 1 minute to like finish my fruit snacks. It's pretty cute. I do want to address, what do you do if your gym does not allow snacks? And this is a big problem. Again, I don't think gyms are malicious. I think there's just a lot of confusion. And I think there's also like legit environmental concerns. So I'm going to say issue number 1 are the gyms that just don't understand the difference between fueling versus snacking. And so you might get an email or the team handbook, or you might get a lecture at the beginning of the year where coaches are like, no snacks, your kids don't need snacks. Or they might say, only healthy snacks allowed. And they give you like an approved list of snacks. And normally fruit is on there, which like, okay, cool, great. That's a carb. But then it'll be like protein bars, nuts, hummus, guacamole. And I'm like, oh no, that's not it. So that's just confusion, right? Like they don't actually understand this concept. And in their minds, they're just thinking that your kid needs a snack because they're getting hungry. And if your kid gets hungry during practice, that means we did not eat enough going into the workout, because exercise is stressful. It blunts the appetite. So if we've got this breakthrough hunger in the middle of practice, or we are hangry after practice, we did not eat enough like going into the workout. So that's probably scenario number 1 of like, it's just a lack of education. Your coaches think that only little kids need snacks. Like they don't understand the connection between performance. And it could be a real opportunity for education. Scenario number 2 would be environmental related. So like a lot of gyms are in industrial warehouses, right? And they already have issues with bugs and mice and rats. And so, maybe they allowed snacks and kids made a mess of it, and that caused a bug infestation. And so, then you get an email saying, no snacks allowed, only water. And that's a real shame and really frustrating, because like it doesn't change the fact that if your kid's training 4.5, 5+ hours a day, like they still do need carbs from an intra-workout perspective. So in that situation, really the only thing you can do, unless you can like convince the gym otherwise, would be to just send a liquid carb. So like 2 bottles, 1 water, 1 carb, and they'll be totally fine with some sports drink, 2 hour into the workout, and then kind of finish drinking it the rest of practice. Am I forgetting any scenarios? I think that's it. I think those are the big issues. Sometimes it's also like the coaches have their own views on what's healthy or not healthy. And so they'll say like no sugary snacks or no Gatorade, just because, again, they don't understand what I just taught you. And in their mind, they're like, oh, sugar is bad for you. It makes you quote unquote fat, or it'll give you diabetes. And it's like, no, while I'm not telling you to drink soda, when it comes to a 4+ hour high intensity anaerobic workout that runs on carbs, I need you to fuel with something that can break down fast enough to digest and get where it needs to go in your gymnast body to give them energy. So, yeah, those are my thoughts. And I do think it's real that like retaliation can happen. And, honestly, this is a safe sport violation. So, just for your information, if the gym does not allow snacks and the workouts are long enough to warrant it and they won't make an exception for your gymnast, like, I mean, that is a safe sport violation. Like, if you go to national team camp, they have Gatorade now at camp. Like most elite gyms like allow snacks. And so I do understand the rodent problem and concerns, but I think that there are options. I know the one gym I shared that like has a table, and that's where bottles and snacks have to go. The only kind of like rules the coach has, and it's perfectly appropriate, is just like no crumbly, sticky, messy snacks. So like, chewy bars are great because like they stick together. But like a Nature Valley bar where you open it and like the crumbled oats go everywhere, totally fair that like they don't want that spilling on the carpet and getting tramped and tramped into the floor, the pit. Like again, it's usually pretty reasonable, but I think something could be worked out. All right, so I'm going to answer some questions, and then let's do performance nutrition in the Facebook group. That way you can also kind of see everyone else's situations, and you guys can like ask questions and stuff about it. Okay. What fruit packet am I showing? Oh, this is a Trader Joe's fruit leather buttons. I just picked it up for our swag boxes. It's 11 grams of carb. So honestly, it's not really technically a full carb snack, and I'll show you what it looks like. I have a lot of them. It kind of looks like a natural fruit roll up. They're like little, like you peel off the little, it's like dried strawberry and mango. It's pretty, it's pretty fruit leathery. So I'd probably not recommend it if your kid has to like really quickly eat something. I have a couple things I want to show you. Obviously, you guys know what fruit snacks are, and I don't have any to show you, but I did want to show you these are glorified fruit snacks. So if you go to the running stores, you will see like honey stinger gels or waffles or honey stinger chews, or these are like scratch energy chews. So half a packet, 5 pieces, 80 grams of carb. I'm sorry, 80 calories, 19 grams of carb. And it's just made with a couple different carb sources. So sugar, glucose syrup, pectin. These are not healthier than fruit snacks. And I'm sure per packet, they're like a couple dollars per packet. Same thing with like the honey stinger gummies. If you like them, more power to you. But normal fruit snacks, pick your poison, Welch's, Black Forest, whatever your favorite ones are, totally fine. If you watch college gymnastics, you'll see the girls with bags of like nerd clusters or Sour Patch, watermelon slices, like some sort of gummy candy, because carbs are carbs. And so you can eat a pack of fruit snacks and get 20 carbs, or you could have a little handful of nerd clusters. I'm not saying that your kid should be eating candy at practice. If you have a kid who loves candy, it may not be a bad idea to do some at practice to try to like help with that craving a little bit, depending on how the gym feels about it. If it's going to ruffle feathers at the gym, you could just stick to like fruit snacks or fruit or whatever. Okay. For the dreaded 8 a.m. meet, what do I recommend? My question is immediately before meet, earlier in the day, if you could have your way, a gymnast would eat. Okay, yeah. So 8 a.m. meet, yep, super hard. I would try to do a high intensity plate breakfast. Even if they can't finish it, I want them to try really hard to get enough carbs and at least a little bit of protein or fat just to give them some staying power. I would probably consider a liquid carbohydrate as well. like a chocolate milk or a juice, especially if like we're struggling to even eat a reasonable amount. I would stick to things that are familiar. So I think right now is a great time to practice and think about, is this a breakfast that I would feel good with, before a meet? And for me personally, I would probably do like 2 pieces of peanut butter toast and banana and probably a glass of Fairlife milk, or Greek yogurt, fruit, and granola, or a bagel and cream cheese with a glass of Fairlife milk. Like I would keep it really simple. And I would also think about like what are things that you can get at a hotel or you can get from the grocery store, especially if you have travel meets. If they're really nervous and having a hard time eating, and let's say they take like 3 bites of their bagel and they feel like they're going to puke, then please get them a sports drink and have them at least sip on the Gatorade all morning just to try to get some carbs in them, kind of like a sick day, right? Like if you're sick and you're trying to get your appetite back, like I'm probably not going to give you an omelet and potatoes and sausage. Like I'm going to give you toast and bagels and some apple juice, like kind of coax you back to eating normally. Let me know if that helps. We're also going to do our Fueling for Comp Season workshop that you are all invited to on December 29th. And we'll deep dive into like what to eat at what times, how it differs in practice, how to handle nerves. So you guys will love that training. Yeah, our next meet's like this. It's 2 hours away. We're driving. When and what to eat is a big question. Yes. Hopefully that just gave you some ideas. You guys have access to our bonus Fueling for Comp workshop from last year in the guide. So just go to the portal, go to programs, and then go to bonuses, and you can go peek ahead at all of that. Yeah, you guys are awesome. What sports drink is going to be the best for giving what they need, having issues with headaches on gym days? So if having headaches on gym days, I would make sure we're eating enough overall. We're growing, we're developing, we're eating enough, we're getting enough carbs. I then might consider some electrolytes actually before gym. So I almost might test out a packet of liquid IV. So like a good amount of sodium, some potassium, a little bit of magnesium. You also could give her that at gym. I probably would do like a liquid IV or a drip drop. I don't think I have any with me. I would do that over Gatorade probably, just because Gatorade's like pretty wimpy in the electrolyte department. And if we're having headaches and we are eating enough and we are drinking enough, then it's probably more of like a sodium, potassium, magnesium issue. So liquid IV, drip drop. You could do a body armor, but I would add salt to it to get the sodium in there. Those would be my go-to for sure. And it might be like we need more magnesium overall. So that might be something in a one-on-one session you talk about. I have a headache protocol that the dietitian can share with you. That is more of just like a preventive protocol. Yes. So ask about that and we'll share that with you. One of our girls has a 7:30 registration time. She'll have a full breakfast between 5:30 and 6, eggs, cheese on English muffin, fruit, and milk. I like it. I think that's good. I mean, I think it's enough carbs. I mean, English muffins on the lower end, probably depends how big your gymnast is. But I think it could work. And if she's going to eat that at 5:30 or 6, then maybe at like 7:15, she has like a fruit leather or fruit snacks or like some little carb, like top the tank kind of snack. Depending on like age level, what's going on. One of the scratch flavors my daughter's interested in has caffeine. Oh, that is true. So yes, one of the scratch flavors has caffeine, both in their energy chews and their hydration. This one doesn't. It's my favorite. I don't think it's a lot off the top of my head. But I know your daughter's really young, so I would say no. If it was like a post-puberty 16-year-old and it was like 50 milligrams of caffeine, it still has the potential to disrupt sleep, right? Especially if training's like in the evening. But for like little tiny younger gymnasts, I would say no. It can increase anxiety. I don't want them to have heart palpitations. Like it's just not something I want to introduce yet. For 5-hour training, is it okay for them to drink Gatorade throughout in their water bottle or have a hydration powder in the water and drink Gatorade for snack time? So I would start carbohydrates 2 hours into the workout. So like the first 2 hours, water's fine. And then let's say they have 2 bottles, a Gatorade and a water. They could start the Gatorade, 2 hours in and then just finish that up between events. The Gatorade by itself may not be enough hydration for the remaining 3 hours, but they can still try to finish it and then come back to the water towards the end. So you have lots of options. You can use a hydration powder like a powdered sports drink, or you can use Gatorade. Um, if you're using a hydration powder like BioSteel or something, that could be in their water, but then they still could use Gatorade as a carb. So I want you guys to think of Gatorade like a carb snack. So like this 20-ounce bottle is 30 grams of carbs. That's a hefty carb snack. Like it's almost 2 snacks, you know? So if your gymnast needs 2 snacks, if they're taking this whole thing and drinking it, they still might need something little, like this little 11-gram fruit leather dealie, or like a little applesauce squeezy. Or if they take the little baby 12-ounce Gatorade, then you could pair that with like a granola bar or something. So many options. Bear snacks. Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. And yes, I would agree. Next makes the same time. Hotel restaurant doesn't open till 7. We're going to test out yogurt parfait. Beautiful. That's exactly what I want you to do. And this is why we have to think ahead, because stuff like this happens where it's like, yes, the hotel has breakfast, but your kid has to be up so early and eat and it's not open. So you order something from Instacart, you pack a cooler and take it with you. You have a plan. Because nerves and tension is already high in the morning, or the day of a competition. And so the last thing we want is to be like fighting about food. This video will be recorded and posted in the portal. So log into Practice Better, the client portal, go to your programs, and then it'll be the preseason cohort recordings. And that's where we'll put it for you. And that's where the other 2 ones are as well. What time would they eat for an 8 a.m. meet? I would say no later than 7. Like I would want a good high intensity breakfast, and I want long enough for it to digest and settle. I want you to get up and have breakfast and then do hair, makeup, and get ready. I know a lot of gymnasts like to get ready first and then go to breakfast, but I want your kid to have as much time as possible for that food to settle and digest, especially if they tend to get nervous. So anyways, well, this has been fun. I will answer your schedules and some recommendations in the Facebook group over the coming days. So I know a lot of you have already posted your schedule there, so no need to do it twice. If you have questions, post it in the Facebook group. Next session is for parents only. It's my favorite, where we're going to dive into underfueling labs, growth development, all the things. And then in a couple weeks, session 5, gymnasts are invited too, and we'll talk about injuries, inflammation, supplements, and stuff like that. So with that, if you have any questions, put them in the chat. If not, you're free to go, because it's definitely late on the East Coast. I'm going to go make some dinner, and I'll see you in the Facebook group. The cooking class recording is, I think, uploaded to the Facebook group. It was a blast. We'll have our bonus fueling for comp season workshop in a couple weeks. And we'll put the link in the Facebook group, and we'll also email it. And we'll go from there. You guys are welcome. You're super welcome. Have a good evening, and I'll see you later.